Hi, and thanks for listening. This is the second in our podcast series, LOQPOD. I'm Katy Ringsdore, and today I'm joined by co-CEOs and co-founders of Loqbox, Gregor Mowat and Tom Eyre. I want to find out more about how to start a business and the Loqbox story. So let's start by introducing you both. Gregor, why don't you kick things off with a little background?
Thanks, Katy. My name is Gregor Mowat. I am one of the co-CEOs and co-founders of Loqbox. Prior to getting involved in ending financial exclusion globally, I was a partner at KPMG, and I never worked for KPMG in the UK. I've always worked overseas. I started in Brazil in 1999, and then I kind of followed promotions and global clients around the world until I made partner in Thailand, and then I eventually finished up working in Russia and the old Soviet Union in Kazakhstan. Where I was the CFO for the region, running a lot of the operations of that business, and managing partner for Kazakhstan and Central Asia. And of course, that was fascinating fascinating time to be there with the oil price collapsing, currencies collapsing, revolutions, Ukrainian civil war, and the annexation of Crimea. All of that stuff had to be managed through, and it was a great business kindergarten, a great place to learn my trade. And I moved back to the UK in 2016, where I had the great good fortune of being introduced to Tom, who had already set up his first financial inclusion business, Credit Improver, back in 2012, and we got on very well. I invested into Credit Improver as a minority. Tom was looking for some funds, and then we kind of worked out the bits that Credit Improver were not solving for the financial inclusion journey, and then we pivoted and created Loqbox together. Tom, over to you, more colour perhaps.
Yeah, thanks, Gregor. So I'm Tom Eyre. I'm the other co-CEO and co-founder of Loqbox. My background, so I've worked in the British Army. So I was in the British Army. I then went to work for an investment company overseas. So I initially started working in Kazakhstan, in Akbar in Kazakhstan. And ultimately, that's probably one of the big drivers that led Gregor and I to be introduced years later. When we were looking for some investment. We say this a lot, but the Venn diagram of people that live in the southwest of the UK and both worked in Kazakhstan at about the same time is literally the two of us. Then from Kazakhstan, I went on to China, so moved over to Shanghai and worked there for the same investment company, and then returned back to the UK. And rather than going back to Kazakhstan at that time, helped a friend set up a different business. So we were doing corporate restructuring. This was back before the last global financial crisis, and we set up a business that helped restructure SMEs. Through the course of the last global financial crisis, we took on a number of consumer debt management businesses, which gave me a bit of an insight into financial exclusion and the hardships that can cause for people. And it was around about that sort of time that my sister had just left Guildford Law School, got a great job in the city. Great salary, tried to buy finance on a sofa on finance for £4 a week, I think it was, and was rejected for being thin or no tiles. So a credit problem that was being replicated up and down the country. And it was at that point that I had the idea for Credit Improver, which, as Gregor mentioned, was the first of our financial exclusion businesses, although we probably wouldn't have termed it like that back then. That was in 2012. Fast forward to 2016, and exactly as Gregor said, looking for some minority investment. Found that in Gregor when we were introduced, and that started kind of the friendship and the partnership that Loqbox bounced about in 2017, and still continues now.
So how does that work then? How are you introduced in the first place? How does that begin? Because for you guys to be connected somehow and then to actually invest and then start the business, how did that work?
Well, from my side, Credit Improver had just been picked up by Martin Lewis as MoneySavingExpert.com as a recommended best buy if you can't get a credit card. So all of a sudden, this kitchen tabletop company that was designed to help young people build a credit history. So addressed the no-file, thin-file problem, relatively unsophisticated in the way it did that. I was just certain that it was a good idea. Our trajectory had been changed, and we decided to go out and raise some broker capital. So we went to a broker, That broker, we actually had an offer. We had a term sheet from a VC, to VC being venture capitalist, to raise the money that we needed, and on a whim, that broker phoned me up and said, "Look, I've got a guy on our books who's interested in financial services. He lives down your way. I was living in the southwest at the time, and maybe the two of you could go out for lunch. You're not going to take his money because you've already got an offer, and he doesn't want to invest in you. So why don't you just have lunch? You both worked in Kazakhstan at about the same time." And I think he pretty much did himself out of a huge commission in that single email, because Gregor and I met for lunch and hit it off and completely changed our strategy. But I mean, there's two sides to every story, so Gregor's probably got the other side of that.
And I was about to ask Gregor, so what was it about Credit Improver and Tom, I suppose, that you wanted to invest in?
So when I moved back from Russia, when I left KPMG, my objective was to set myself up as an angel investor. And but I'm an amateur, so I was just feeling my way. I'd never done this before, and not in a meaningful way. And so I went through. If you're an angel investor, you want to try and work out how to get. First of all, where do your leads come from? How do you meet people who are looking for money? So I signed up with a bunch of brokers. I had the word out with my friends if they heard of any investment opportunities. And over the course of a kind of 6-month period, I must have looked at over 100 different businesses. And I set myself some criteria. So it had to be a business. There were three criteria. It had to be an industry that I understood. So that took me to financial services. I was a financial services sector partner in KPMG. It needed to be scalable. So tech was one of the things that I was interested in, and equally important. All three of these were equally important. It needed to have a positive social impact. So it needed to be a mission-led business. And I'd been looking at lots of different things from foreign currency FX businesses through to straight lending businesses, and hadn't come across anything where it ticked all those boxes, and I liked the people involved and felt I could be actively involved. So when I met Tom, as he said, we hit it off, and it was clear that Tom quite valued my financial background, and I really liked his entrepreneurial flair, and so it looked like it was a really good fit. And then, of course, Credit Improver, it ticked those three boxes for me, so away we went.
And then, so obviously now Credit Improver is not Loqbox. We've evolved to Loqbox. Tom, talk me through that evolution and how that's happened.
Yeah, sure. It happened pretty quickly. So we looked. So what was Credit Improver? Credit Improver was originally designed to help young people build a demonstrable credit history to address the thin file no file problem, which naively is just a tiny part of the problem. And when Gregor and I really kind of banged our heads together, we realised that we weren't addressing every element of what we needed to do. So we went out there, we spoke to our customers, we spoke to credit reference agencies, we spoke to banks, to lenders, etc. What is it that you need? And we realised that what was needed was much broader than what we were doing. We distilled it at the time down into what became the three pillars that we built the entire business on. So opportunity, capability. We needed to give consumers an opportunity to participate in the financial system by building a demonstrable credit history that could be accessed and used by other lenders and that accurately represented their ability to manage monthly recurring payments from a discretionary disposable income. That was the opportunity that we needed to give people. Then we realised that we needed capability as well. So it's not enough to just build a credit history. It's not enough to just be able or have the opportunity to participate. You have to know how to participate. You have to know how to operate in a way that doesn't put you under at some point. And unfortunately, Gregor and I feel like we're a broken record about this. Nobody does financial education properly. Nobody gives financial education the amount of respect that it deserves. In the UK, we haven't seen it anywhere, and bearing in mind, Gregor and I have worked literally all over the world, and nowhere does it particularly well. So what happens is you end up having predominantly young people, because let's face it, that's where it starts, leaving schools, colleges, universities, and going out into the big wide world without any kind of financial education whatsoever. I mean, when I left school, I knew pi to about 8 digits. It was like a party trick I could reel off. But could I have told you what APR stood for? And that absolutely no, I couldn't. Could I have told you what a direct debit was, or why it's different to a standing order or a continuous payment authority on a debit card? Absolutely no idea. And the point was, I was woefully unprepared for life as a financial adult in the UK, which is a relatively sophisticated financial environment. So we needed to imbue our product with education so that we could impart capability on the people who used it. So that's the second part. And then the third pillar was resilience. It's all well and good being in the system, but financial inclusion isn't binary. You're never always included or always excluded. It's always a little bit of both. And we are always kind of one disaster away from being financially excluded. Everyone, no matter what your income or your set of circumstances are, you're one slight change in circumstances away from being financially excluded. And resilience, savings helps you with that. It helps put some buffer between you and major dramas. So in learning that, and that's relatively articulately put now, we were far less articulate as we were coming up with this kind of framework for building our business. We realised that in Credit Improver we were doing some of those things adequately, but not all of those things well. So I think it was in December 2016 we had the idea for Loqbox, and bearing in mind we just spent a load of money redoing Credit Improver, rebranding the website, etc. And we made this kind of, in this fledgling relationship of Gregor and mine, we made this decision to pivot entirely away from Credit Improver and build a whole new business. We were able to use the same tech stack that we had at the time, so we were able to do it quite quickly. But we knew that we needed to do it, and we agreed that it was the right thing to do. So in December 2016, we had the idea and refined Loqbox. By July 2017, we were coming out of pilot, having had X number of customers going through the process for a period of time, checking that everything worked. So it was a really, really, really quick turnaround. But that's what drove that switch in prioritization from Credit Improver to the newly formed Loqbox.
And Gregor, obviously there's risks associated. I mean, Tom's kind of touched on the way you guys have learnt to articulate what the business is and the transformation to Loqbox. What are the risks associated with starting your own business, but also changing it before, it's become what is now known as Loqbox? What have you learnt?
I've learnt how to survive on very little sleep. There's lots of things we've learned, lots and lots of things. So when you're starting a business which creates a product that never existed before, and that's something that Tom did with Credit Improver and that the two of us did again with Loqbox, is that you as an entrepreneur and a business person, you've got a strong belief that you're addressing a problem for people, but until people actually buy it, you don't know if you've got product market fit, to use the terminology. And that's probably, when you're starting out completely from scratch, the number one risk, because at that stage there's not a huge amount of capital at risk. It's your time, and as Tom said, we had the tech stack already built for Credit Improver, so that just needed to be modified in order to work for Loqbox. And so once you put something live, and Credit Improver was live, and it really helped a particular group market segment who had typically made mistakes in the past and recognised that they had to pay it. It was going to cost them money to rebuild their reputation effectively because they'd made mistakes with credit in the past. What was difficult with Credit Improver was getting it to scale at the price point it was at. So it rocketed to a certain point, and then it kind of stuck at that point for a bit. And at that point, we were asking ourselves, well, how do you deal with that? We haven't quite got all of product market fit. We've got segment of product market fit. So we need to find out how to do something differently. And the eureka moment was when Tom worked out the Loqbox commission mechanism that allows Loqbox to be free for customers, because at that point we take the price point fear away that was blocking people, the wider market segment out of using Credit Improver. And once we worked that out, then we actually were quite happy to let Credit Improver continue to exist because it was helping a group of people, and then we could service the other groups in the market using Loqbox. So product market fit is absolutely crucial. Then as you grow, then capital becomes important because you need to expand your team, and it's very difficult with a consumer finance product to achieve in month 1 or month 2 the scale that the income generated will cover all the fixed costs you need. So you need to go out and raise capital in order to be able to do that. And so that's a big consideration. What are your capital needs, and how do you get it? And we obviously thought about that because we had a business that was cash generative. We were moving to one that would take a little bit of time to become cash positive. So that, as part of the pivot, that was a crucial thinking, was, well, we will need to raise funds. So we eked out the remainder of my Credit Improver investment for as long as we could, and then in early 2018, so after a year of working on Loqbox, we then went and raised the capital that allowed us to hire our initial team, and then we've done that several times. I think they're probably the two. There are lots and lots of other considerations. The biggest is just be ready for lots and lots and lots of hard work. There's no easy way to build a business, I don't think, but it's very stimulating. And so whenever you go into a new business, you've always got that excitement that means that burning the midnight oil doesn't really matter. But those two, and specifically in terms of pivoting, I think those 2 points are valid.
Yeah, and to your point, you two work tirelessly. I don't think you're ever switching off. I mean, Tom, so far over the 5-6 years you've been doing this, any regrets? And don't say employing a head of media relations.
No, not any regrets. Sorry, I'm looking around for words because I obviously haven't pre-rehearsed any of these answers. No, do you know what? I don't think I do, actually. I don't think I do. So certainly no regrets at all about getting into this business. Absolutely love what we do. I think every single experience we've had in the between 2012 and now has directly contributed to how the business operates now. So no, sorry, I'm going to bail on that question by saying no regrets, nothing I've changed.
No, you're absolutely entitled to answer that if you have no regrets. So what's a typical day for you, Tom? I mean, obviously you're both CEOs, but you're co-founders. So, you're the brains behind the business, but you're actually running it at the same time, which is becoming more usual, I think, in entrepreneurialism. But for you guys, it's a hard job. What's a typical day for you?
Well, it's got weirder now that we're in lockdown. So it's changed a little bit. So I mean, maybe like the average day before lockdown was we had. So I live in right on the Somerset Devon border, so rural kind of Somerset. And Greg and I, Gregor lives down in not in London, Bristol, or America, which are the three cities that. Sorry, I say three cities, two cities in a country that we built a business in. So there was an awful lot of travelling. So I would travel to Bristol on a daily basis, often up to London on a daily basis, sometimes both on a daily basis, and then kind of 1 week in 6 we'd go and spend it in America, getting involved in the US business. So there was a huge amount of travel and a huge amount of time spent on trains doing that. That's all gone now since lockdown. So like now my day is I think probably desperately dull, like everybody else's. I wake up, I sit at my desk, I work, and during the morning we work with the team in the UK. There's often proposition work that goes into that, so thinking about the innovation that goes into our product. Then in the afternoon, the focus tends to move more towards the US as the US comes online, and then the evenings are spent with the US business as well. So the day morphs from UK team, UK proposition, US proposition and team into the evening, and then I eat, sleep, and repeat.
And you've mentioned the US there. I'm quite interested as to why you chose the US as the second market to launch. Perhaps, Gregor, you could cover some thinking behind that.
Certainly. it wasn't a difficult decision because whilst in the UK, the concept of credit building and credit builder products is very new. Tom was right at the forefront back in 2012, where there were some traditional products such as there's a term now, low and grow credit cards and or kind of cash backed credit cards. Well, not fully cash backed, but kind of no funds at risk credit cards that were designed specifically for credit building. There was really nothing else, and so in the UK, initially Tom and I together have been creating an industry where there wasn't one. Whereas in the US, credit scoring and credit building are much more ubiquitous and have been part of the fabric of the financial system there for 30 or 40 years, and certainly 30 years. And there have been credit builder products such as credit unions providing cash secured loans and banks providing the same for that length of time. So we already knew that there was a market for our product. In the UK, it was about creating something interesting that could grab people's attention and then educating them. Great businesses like ClearScore have done their own fair share to do that by getting the whole your credit score matters message out to the general public, and they're up at 8 million people, and there are numerous other businesses doing the same thing as them. So when we went to America, we knew, first of all, it's a market. There's 300 million people in America, and we knew that there's at least a kind of 120 to 130 million who have poor credit scores or struggle to access credit, fairly priced credit. So we knew that there was a big marketplace. We knew that there were products, but they were quite expensive. And so with the US, it was more a case of going to a market which had the product we offer, but didn't. But we were coming in to disrupt it with a free product. And since we've done that already, we're seeing other free credit builders popping up. So our disruption tactic is actually working.
Well, as you say, there's proof in the pudding that, you bring that to the market and all of a sudden you start to see other people copying it. And obviously you're not going to be able to tell me, your future growth plans, because you wouldn't want to be giving that information away too early. But are there plans in the future for Loqbox to grow even more around the world?
Well, absolutely. I mean, our mission is very clear. The corporate mission is to end financial exclusion globally, and to do that, by definition, we have to go to as many countries as we can as resources allow. So, we've got our own internal plans about where, when, and how. But yes, absolutely, global expansion is on our roadmap.
And Tom, on your journey so far, especially with Loqbox, what have been the big kind of aha moments, I suppose?
Yeah, in the early days, I was extremely surprised that just because you build it doesn't necessarily mean they will come. Which caught me out a couple of times right in the early days, where we knew that there was an extremely clear need for a product, and we felt that we provided a perfect solution to that. But alas, just because you have those two things doesn't mean that getting people to come and join you is effortless. That was probably one of the big takeaways. I think earlier on, and drove, sounds obvious when you say it, but drove a lot of the kind of the changes of strategy and changes of direction that we had during the course of that process. Certainly in the early couple of years. I think secondly, building partnerships, which is something we've done really, really, really well. And I'm extremely proud of what Gregor and I achieved and what the kind of the wider business has managed to achieve and the team has managed to achieve in that respect. Because the people that we help, typically, they don't find out that they are financially excluded to some degree. Most of the people that we help would not describe themselves as financially excluded. But the people that we help tend not to find out about it organically, just for themselves. It tends to be as a byproduct of them doing something else. So they apply for their first mobile phone contract and find they can't get it, or they're rejected for a car finance or a loan or a credit card or whatever it might be. There is a trigger event that generally means that they start to think about, what do I need to do about my credit history, my credit score, my financial position. What we have been, I think, very, very good at is identifying businesses in the market that those customers interact with, that those people interact with, at the point that they get that rejection, the point that they realise that there is that kind of crystallising moment for them, and convincing them that the right thing to do is to send those people and to signpost them and kind of drive them towards Loqbox to give them an opportunity, and that was a really big kind of aha moment, because it really helped our acquisition of customers, and really helped us grow. And not just us, it meant that the right people were getting the right product at the right time, and for the businesses that we were working with, it meant that they were able to offer something much more valuable than just a no, which traditionally was what happened. So it's one of those great kind of no-lose situations for everybody involved.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'll ask you both this, but I'll start with you, Tom. You know, like we were talking about earlier, it's relentless. And, you know, I'm not making that sound like a negative thing at all, because there are benefits to it as well. But personally, on a personal level, have you learnt much about yourself?
Well, I mean, that's probably the same thing. I think everybody in these positions would probably say is that you keep learning, that you can do quite a bit more than you thought you could do. And, you know, I think the last decade has just been a series of false summits where you think, okay, well, I'm right at the steepest bit. It's the heaviest lift, it's the hardest work, and it's the biggest challenge, but it'll be over soon, and then we'll hit this particular metric or this particular milestone that will slow down. And actually, life just doesn't work like that. Nor does running a business. But every time you get there, it would be a false summit, and you think, oh no, actually, there's a much steeper path ahead. And that's just repeated on a 3-month cycle for now a decade. And if you keep going, then that's probably good enough.
And what about you, Gregor? Have you learned anything in particular about yourself that's perhaps surprised you?
Well, I'd echo Tom's comments. I think for me specifically, so I came into this after a kind of quite traditional career, albeit for a British person, less traditional geographies, and then I moved into the entrepreneurial world. And we one of our cornerstone investors is a director on our board, and he shares this concept with us that it's healthy to rewire your brain from time to time, by taking on things that are outside your comfort zone, learning new skills, and that gives you those skills become hardwired if you use them enough. And I think that definitely for me there was in the earlier stages there was a rewiring process where I had to kind of undo some of my kind of more incumbent KPMG thinking and learn the more hacky early stage business stuff, and the resilience it's another level of resilience from working with a Big Four accounting business. So yeah, I think rewiring my brain has been one of the outcomes of this exercise, and a very positive one, actually.
And actually, that might be the answer to the next question I'm going to ask you. But I don't know if you've seen, but Elon Musk was asked the other day on a social media channel if he could give any advice to entrepreneurs, and his response was, if they need advice, they shouldn't become an entrepreneur, which I thought was a bit harsh, personally. What advice would you give, Gregor?
I'd echo that.
Would you really?
I genuinely would echo that. I mean, it's not that. Of course, there's lots of advice to give people, and I think it's be prepared for a level of resilience that you maybe haven't estimated. All the stuff that Tom said previously, all of that. There's lots of advice. If you don't have a finance background, it's probably helpful to make sure you've got finance skills around you and business administration skills around you. There's a whole playbook that you can buy in shops and books that talk about this. But I think ultimately what Elon Musk is basically saying is that you've either got the drive and the interest to do it, in which case you're going to do it anyway, irrespective of what anyone says, or you don't.
Yeah, Tom, would you add anything to that, or do you agree as well?
No, I absolutely agree. And I've heard it said before, and I think it's really true, that if you are going to be an entrepreneur, it is inevitable. It will just happen. It's not actually a choice, because you won't be satisfied doing anything else, working for somebody else, not having a new idea, not pushing that idea through. So I'm just not sure it's a choice, really, when you boil down to it, because if you want it, and if that's the way you think, you will end up just doing it. So that's probably true in respect of the way of what Elon Musk is saying, which is, if you're having to be talked into it, it's probably not in your DNA.
Yeah, you're probably right. And actually, I'd agree with that. With most of the entrepreneurs I've met and worked with over the years, you're a certain type. And I don't mean that in a negative way whatsoever. But Tom, what's been your favourite moment so far throughout the whole period of, Credit Improver, Loqbox to present day? What would you say has been the best moment for you so far?
Gosh, there have been an awful lot of them. It would be extremely difficult to pick just one of them. But in amongst kind of the top 10 moments, I suppose one of the ones that comes to mind was Gregor and I, when we won our first award for something. And I won't name the award, but Loqbox won an award. It was quite early on. We had been grinding it out in London. We hadn't gone international at that point, and really working our socks off, telling everyone how great we were, and how great our business was. And it was the first time that someone else had agreed with us and given us an award, or a panel of people had agreed with us. And there was a moment where I don't think we were a few beers down by this point. I think it was before the beers had started flowing, but where we were sat there and we were just telling each other all the reasons why it won't be us. And then it happened, and there was kind of a look of complete shock between the two of us, and then kind of lots of cheers and excitement and fun that continued right the way through the evening. But that's a real memory for me, because it was the first time that somebody else validated in one way or another what we knew in our hearts to be true, that the business and the product was good, and it was helping people, and it was doing all that good stuff that we were telling people we were doing.
And what about you, Gregor? What's been your highlight so far?
Well, I mean, that was definitely up there. There have been, as Tom said, there's been lots. We've had a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of fun, and talking about the business literally through the night, as we've been kind of staying over in London because we've got meetings back to back the next day, and having a laugh along the way. So that's been great. But I think actually one of the highlights will always be lunch at the Noisy Lobster in Christchurch in 2016 when I met Tom.
That's brilliant. And that's where it all started. I suppose, Gregor, while I've got you then, another question is, if you could start a business in another sector right now, outside of what you're doing, I'm kind of asking you to pick up a bit of a crystal ball, I suppose. Where do you see opportunity?
For the opportunity for the business?
No, generally. So if you were going to start a business in a completely different sector right now, what sector would you be looking at?
Oh, I think there's lots, but I think the really hot sector is blockchain, and everyone immediately jumps to cryptocurrency and speculation, etc. But it doesn't have to be about that. It's how is blockchain? What are the best ways to maximize the technology behind blockchain to achieve better, more efficient business outcomes for existing business models, or to break existing business models and create new ones? I think that for me is probably in the sphere of stuff I'm looking at and thinking about. That's probably the number one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And the potential with blockchain is huge. I mean, we were talking about it in the last episode of LOQPOD with Maria Harris, and that's being integrated into mortgages. So that'll be really interesting to watch. Tom, what about you?
Well, actually, I agree with Gregor, but that would be a really boring answer if I just said what he said. So I'll go completely left flanking on this one. I think I would try and find a business that I could set up in kind of rewilding or alternative farming would be the direction I would head in. I think not because I necessarily think. Well, actually, I do think it will change the world. Not that I think a business that I set up would do that, but I think it would just be quite fun and quite interesting.
No, that's brilliant. Well, both, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking to you about how to start a business and the Loqbox story. We could talk for hours, but I think we'll leave it there for now. But thank you both very much indeed for your time.
Thanks, Katy.
Thanks, Katy.